All right, cool. So we're live. What's up, everybody?
Hello. So, looks like we've got
So we're
everything
looking at.
already imported, eh?
Yeah, I figured I'd do a little pre-pro.
Yeah, look
You know
at
what I
you.
mean?
Look at
Because
you.
importing and doing all the screen flipping, it was getting to be a lot, mid-show.
Yeah, there's still going to be things to screen flip and talk about, though, because
Yeah, of course.
we're going back. This is the history. We're being archaeologists right now, right?
Oh yeah,
So-
definitely. So let me actually, speaking of things that need to be flipped, let's bring up Browserland. There we go. So, I actually found tournaments even older than this after the fact of me importing them all, of course. But today we're looking at the 2nd of May, 2020.
Oh yeah, actually, I can definitely tell you that there's tournaments older than this because I participated in them. So.
Oh, good. Well,
My first tournament was the 29th of April.
Copy. Yeah, so this one, and we're also looking at the 9th of May, and like I was telling you in, PMs, I didn't realize this was actually the Gladiator blog, because as soon as I got to the page, I just kind of scrolled down and started importing decks. But it looks like we can go back to...
Yeah, they had some old tournaments.
Yeah, we can go back to the 24th of April, and I think that's probably the oldest it gets. I think the oldest
That's
message
the
in the
oldest
Discord
record
is
we
like...
have, I believe, yeah.
Right, so good to know that we'll be able to deep dive that far back.
Yeah, there may be... I think a lot of the tournament organizers from back then have moved on to other things than the format.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big group of organizers back then, and kind of everyone ran their own thing, and it wasn't all that connected, so to speak. So
Right.
record keeping was scarce.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I could kind of tell because the records, like all the deck lists were hosted in different places, and some were on tapped
I
out.
understand why. I can tell you why.
Why's that?
Well, you see, we didn't have Aether Hub for until you saw Aether Hub came in May.
I see.
April tournaments, Aether Hub came into existence in May or something. The April tournaments, they were done by posting your deck list and adding the tournament organizer in a special chat room of the Discord, who they all would then take, record, and manually pair the event.
Right.
Instead of using any sort of other function.
Interesting.
So, literally everything was done by hand in the April events.
Yeah, that's dedication. That's a lot of work. So let's get started with the 2nd of May.
So 2nd of May. So this is the technically earlier tournament compared to what we were looking at before.
Right. So we got the 2nd and the 9th, but this is the 2nd here on Aether Hub.
Okay, so 4-round tournament with how many people?
With how many people?
36 looks like. So
Right.
a little bit different format than we're used to, because we're typically seeing 5 rounds so long as we're over 18 players. So,
Yeah.
Interesting. Also, just looking at the names here, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some you might recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Monowog, Archer Master, still around. Horatius, I believe, is still around here and there.
Okay.
It That Betrayed, I believe, is about. Nana Come Home, I've seen. Hello, Ultragel, how you doing? And then lower in the list, lower in the standings, I think there's a few others that have stayed around since this first event, if you want to scroll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's Lightning. 18th.
Right.
And I believe That's the last one I really recognize. Frochambeau seems familiar as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking at, names, and I saw some, like the ones you named, really. But different players, different decks. Interestingly enough, let's get right into this first deck. I guess this doesn't tell us the matchups, but either way.
Yeah, Aether Hub is not as good as MtG Melee.
Right.
If we want to know the matchups, we have to go through each round, and that's just not feasible.
Got you.
We could do it, but no.
Right. Ultra Joe, hello. Thanks for stopping in, by the way, as well. We're going to flip back to the arena land.
Yeah, and thank you for the kind words in the podcast.
And we're going to get going with Mono White.
So this is
sideways.
This is the first of these lists. This is finalist number 1 of
the 2nd of May. Mm-hmm.
So, funnily enough, this is the most familiar list we're probably going to see today.
Right.
Because this was kind of the first aggro deck that people really tried in the format, as far as I can tell.
Is that so? Interesting.
Like Mono White Death and Taxes has a following in Legacy and other places where people are kind of it's a bit like Storm in Modern, where people will just kind of run it, whether or not it's good, whether or not they actually win, because it's their Magic identity.
Right.
Nothing against it, but there are some very dedicated pilots to Mono White Death and Taxes, and this was attempting to call back to that. Mm-hmm. I would assume there's a lot of things here that I actually still agree with. Hushbringer, that sort of stuff, still there. Mm-hmm. We still see the Thalia, still see Tithe Taker, Silverbeak Griffin, Tomek, those sort of early evasive or hard to kill threats.
Right. What's interesting is that... Go ahead.
The degradation is in the 3s and up, where you're playing a lot worse cards like Perimeter Sergeant, like Make a Stand and Devant Trapper, Blade Instructor, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, these 3s aren't looking as prime as
and that's really what we've got since this was run to a 4-0 finish in this event.
Mm-hmm. Just want to take a quick second and shout out Andre. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you for coming in, Andre.
And so, like when I look at this list, I actually see some cards that, or at least a card that I talked about in the last episode, right? Phalanx Tactics. Kind of interesting to see it here. I guess it's been pushed out in the eyes of many pilots, but a lot of this list, there was a core that was bubbling up, as we've seen.
Yeah, it came up. It did okay, and then everyone started playing mid-range.
Yeah, which I'm sure we'll see
next list, and I think we might even. Feeling I'm like 40% to be accurate in a transition here.
Okay, so that was T1-1. T1-2 is actually blue-green ramp.
Ramp. Okay, sort of ramp. Mm-hmm. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. Where this is sort of a hoof precursor, right?
Right. Hoof wasn't in the format at this point yet, right?
No, not several months.
Okay.
So we're looking at these early mana dorks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Druid of the Mighty, Druid of the Cow, all those good pieces. Going into a little less 3s, because you're typically skipping up to 4.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
You got your Beast Whisperer, Nullhide, Questing Beast, Riptor Raptor, basically all the good 4s we have available to us. And a similar take on the 5s in this list as well. I think I agree with a lot of these choices in the 5-drop slot.
Right.
Once you hit the sixes, I'm a little less in agreement. Flooded Tears End Rivers Rebuke is a little excessive, but just indicative of how the format was back then.
Yeah.
Gyruda is a little inconsistent and hard to cast in a deck that is primarily green.
That's true.
But it can be powerful. Indian Treachery and Cure Vested Sea God, just indicative of how much top end was kind of played and felt was needed to be played to finish games back then. Also, going back to Mass Manipulation, which
this spell is
this card costs 8
quite lofty
at least.
Exactly.
I do like the Yorvo Steelleaf Champion Mass Manipulation deck.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see these lists and how much top end you can afford to run. Thorn Mammoth coming out. I think Thorn Mammoth, probably could come out a little bit more.
Yeah, Thorn Mammoth
we do have more efficient beaters.
Yeah, proven to be a little too small at a 6/6 trample for 7.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Especially with the advent of Vorinclex.
Oh, this adds green and blue. Okay, I was gonna say, like, we might be going deep for a 3 mana 1/1 that only adds a single mana. But
no Rishkar yet, so
no Rishkar, true.
No Rishkar, no Elvish Archdruid. Both of those I don't think were in the format. The first major addition to the format was M21.
Right.
Which came out I don't remember when it came out, but it was a huge shake to how these decks were built because of just how much power was printed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, decent agreement with most of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People weren't bad at building decks back then,
Right.
So those are the 2 4-0s. Now we got a bunch.
Now we're on to the 3-1s. Yeah, and I've got down to top 10. Usual format.
So we did the winning records or top 10, and in this case, they were both the same. You usually take whatever is the smallest amount. Correct?
That's correct. So let me find T13.
You still got the browser up.
Yep, I'm gonna flip it. So this is Jeskai Control, not a list, not a concept we've seen in many of the more current metas. What do you think about this?
Well, let's before we look at the actual cards included in the deck itself, let's look at the lands for a second, because this is why it's not as included.
Right.
You see how deep they're going?
It's deep. It's deep stuff.
Gateway Plaza deep, I'd say.
Gateway Plaza? Is that? Oh no. Yeah, it's pretty deep.
Also, 4 colorless lands, which we've determined to be twice as many as you really can afford to run.
And Forgotten Cave and Sandbar. I think this also kind of speaks to the format probably having been a little bit slower around these times, right?
Much slower. Like I was saying, looking at the Narcissus Reversal and the Quench as a little bit questionable interaction in the early game. I would also note that this is the only deck I'll give a pass for playing Didn't Say Please.
Didn't Say Please. Where's that at? Point that out.
It's underneath Prison Borrower.
Underneath Prison Borrower. I don't know these cards off the top of my head.
3 mana.
3 mana.
Above Muyanling, above Narset, below Brit. Yeah, there it is.
Didn't Say Please. Copy. Interesting. So,
which in our format is actively a cancel with downside. Didn't Say Please, and it's similar effect in a different set that I don't remember the name of. Is cancel with downside, because milling your opponent only helps them in every deck, but save a few.
Right.
Every single deck is starting to use something to utilize their graveyard. Even like mono white aggro, you can mill over one of their 2 escape cards and effectively draw them a card by using this didn't say please instead of just straight cancel.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Back then, we didn't really have that same thing. Like, Search for Azcanta was there, but Escape wasn't. People weren't really playing a lot of the escape cards. Escape was out, the mechanic was present, but it was less all-encompassing across the entire format. People were using their graveyard less. It was still incorrect, but I'm saying this is a mistake to make months ago. Don't make it now. Don't play Didn't Say Please.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you there. And I mean, the rest of this looks pretty standard.
Yeah, it definitely needs more removal for the early game if it was going to be translated to even slightly competitive in our format. Sorry, in our current meta. But it's pretty solid. The top end, as we said, was a little bit it's often a little bit heavier than we're used to. Where a lot of extra top end, although I can't see any of it because of the card you're looking at right now.
Sorry.
Where like Inspired Ultimatum, something I'd point out as being not really a thing we're doing right now.
No, definitely not. And that casting cost is absurd.
Yeah, especially in a deck that's running so little red otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well,
but power of Whirlwind of Thought is evident in the early versions of this format.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is
Bant Reclamation.
4th place Bant Reclamation. Is this the first Archer Master list we're seeing, or is this a different player?
So this is. Let's find out exactly who it is. This is Ryan Empty Grin.
Okay, so not Archer Master, which I actually could tell just by looking at it, because Archer Master never played Emergency Powers or Idyllic Tutor. I wish I could enjoy the music too, Supreme.
Yeah, I had to mute the music myself because the zoo noises kept interrupting. But we
is it part of this track?
No way, because the music's coming from a YouTube stream. So I just have no idea what's going on. But
whatever. Also interesting, this Dovin, Hand of Control.
Dovin, Hand of Control, is that the
3 mana underneath Reclamation Sage in the 3 drops.
3 mana underneath Rec Sage. Yes. Very interesting.
So we're never going to see this card in a control deck, I think, again.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's
There's
not
better
awful,
things going on.
But compare this with the Gideon of the same mana cost, that instead of a -1 is a +1 for the exact same effect, plus a bunch of other abilities. Dovin just doesn't do enough, right?
No, it's definitely a card that's been pushed out.
Yeah, and also like Mythos of Snapdax is a note to how terrible our early Wraths were. Where Mythos of Snapdax is there as a pseudo 4 mana Wrath of God, and then we got actual Wrath of God.
Yeah, Wraths were looking pretty bad. I mean, there was no Doomscar, no Wrath. You had
no
Settle.
Fumigate.
No Fumigate.
No. This deck isn't playing Time Wipe. This deck should be playing Time Wipe, but also not everyone has every card.
Especially this early on, there's probably more wild card consideration than not.
Finale of Glory is one that I'm I've never enjoyed, and definitely doesn't really fit in this list, even with the Reclamation plan, because it's sorcery speed. It fits a little bit better because we had access to Teferi, which, you know, Teferi 3 is a busted magic card and wins games, even with the worst cards you can imagine playing.
Right.
But there are some very strange choices. You know, one of Spectral Sailor in the 1-drops, often Spell Pierce as the others. And it's just indicative of where we started. You know, topping out with just a random emergency powers with no real way to break it or break the parity of it is very early Gladiator. Though emergency powers, I think, has more play than we're giving it credit for, even in the current meta. But there's too much aggro for this card to come in my eyes.
Yeah, I think you know, we're just a little bit quicker than this at this point.
Yeah, Agent, Nexus, typical top end for a Reclamation list.
Right.
You got your Dream Trawler, Commence, Rivers. Honestly, ignoring some of the strange choices getting to it, the top end of this list is surprisingly lean. Save emergency powers exclusively.
Yeah, emergency powers seems a bit lofty. Fairy Formation, this is the card I thought it was. I like the idea of this card a lot. But I also think that you know, it's just hard to. I don't know if Baneslayer and Lyra were in it at this point. Were they?
I believe Baneslayer came with M21. Lyra was already there. In my eyes, this deck wants to see Kefnet, Garton Kefnet. And Garton Kefnet took way too long to be discovered in the format. I kind of give myself a little bit of credit for it, because I was playing a whole bunch of extremely high Spells Matters lists, and then saw how amazing it was in those and kept going down.
Right.
And touting it along the way, but...
Yeah, Kefnet 4/5 for 4, you know, plus maybe extra spells. Hard to say no to, but yeah, Fairy Formation is a piece of top end that I would like to play more, but just because of, you know, I like it.
It's decent. It's decent when you're doing things like Wilderness Reclamation. You're getting your untaps pretty quickly and have all this extra mana to use.
That's true.
I'd like to see it in a deck that's using like Biomancer's Familiar and Zerda to make it less mana.
That's interesting as well.
And then we also have a few like bad divinations.
Yeah. Probably speaking to, you know, card draw not being as great. I would hope anyway.
Yeah, it's just, well, card draw is fine, and Secret of the Golden City is just kind of a bad include, honestly, in this deck. I'm not going to mince words here. The extra blue, it does not is not worth the benefit that it offers.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
We had less available to us, right? Like, I think since this deck was created, we've gotten several thousand cards into the format. At least 1,000, if not 2.
Right. So Heliod's intervention, the spice or the no dice?
It's spice. It's still possibly good in a more mid-rangey meta, and the fact that a lot of control and a lot of decks right now are using Banishing Lights again, and a lot of heavy enchantment-based removal makes Heliod's intervention a little bit better than it might have been a few months ago. Right now. Interesting.
So this card, it might have gone up in stock, you're saying?
Well, it was good back then, but it's not been amazing in like the last few months, just because of how aggressive and early and low to the ground people were playing, and now Control has kind of gotten a little bit more to it, and they're still playing all their seal ways and such. So Helog's Intervention, I think, is a call to basically, I'm a big mana deck, and I need to free my permanents from the opposing control list, or just gain 20 life if I've got too much mana to spend.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Like, the burst of life gain is not awful when it's that big.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Alright, well, that's ban reclamation.
The lands are indicative of an older mentality.
Yeah, I can see that. So let's take a look at T15. We have Esper Control. It was interesting to see how much control was showing up in these earlier tournaments, actually.
Well, it's the same reason that Control is showing up in our current tournaments. Yes, also I believe that was the first list we've seen with Field of the Dead in it. And that was format warping. This was pre-Jumpstart. This was pre-M21. This was May 2nd, I believe, correct?
This is May 2nd, yeah. Mm-hmm. May 2nd,
the May 2nd event.
So we got Esper here. Field of the Dead. And Field of the Dead actually was in the Jeskai list as well.
Just note, because of Field of the Dead, people were playing more varied tap lands, and it was more correct to have going all the way up to guild gates in some situations because you wanted
to hit those
varied
7
land
uniques.
types.
Right.
And Field of the Dead, if you haven't played with this card, I envy you, because it is a absolutely broken Magic card.
Yeah.
And it warped games consistently around it and around making sure it could come into play, even in a deck like this where you had no way to get to it other than literally drawing it.
Yeah, I remember the Field of the Dead days. I built a Field of the Dead Gates list, Scape Shift, and it was mostly goofy.
Actually, once we got Maze's End, Field of the Dead's Maze's End lists for like the 1 or 2 weeks that they existed.
Right.
Because we got Maze's End, and then Field of the Dead was almost immediately banned afterwards. But that like little bit there was actually possibly the best Field of the Dead list we had.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember Maze's End coming out and talking to some friends and being like, "Is this a list?" So I guess it was. But yeah. Let's talk the individual cards.
Erebos' Intervention. I appreciate seeing the Erebos' Intervention. A card that was popular early, fell out of favor, and now is back on the menu because of how important the graveyard is again. Definitely wasn't played for the graveyard interaction in this first tournament, I would say, but it's there.
Definitely.
Revitalize, Essence Scatter, Lucy, Search for his content, yep. Decent
nothing too out of the ordinary.
Interaction suite early. Resplendent Angel is a little out of place.
Yeah, it's not looking too at home there. Love to see Cry.
Yeah, Cry the Cranarium. Yeah, Cry the Cranarium was a card that was consistently played because, while there wasn't an aggro deck in the format, everyone who wanted to play some sort of aggro deck was playing bad versions of Aristocrats.
Ah, I see. I didn't know as much Aristocrats was running around as it was.
Oh, Aristocrats, like Death and Taxes, people will play it no matter how good it is in the format because it's their deck, and woe is them if it's bad.
Yeah, that's definitely the truth. Aristocrats probably
also,
more so
you need a way to
Death
clean
and
up field
Taxes.
tokens. Very true, Root.
That's a good point as well.
Which meant that it wasn't dead in the control matchup like it would otherwise be now. Deputy Attention Dovin, Deputy Attention, classic Deputy Attention 5 Wrath deck. Classic.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nombo there. I actually want to talk Dovin. What do you think about this card in Control? Because when I look at this card, I see strictly ticking down versus aggro, right? Gaining a Thopter, blocking a thing, and gaining a life.
It's medium. It's just it is. I think people played it because they really want a Lingering Souls, and this is sort of a weird Lingering Souls.
Yeah, that would be a
right?
strange, maybe a little bit.
It makes flyers consistently for a little while and gains you a little bit of life. But that's all it does.
Right.
Like I am not a fan personally. I've lost to it once or twice because it got stuck and the deck I was playing could not beat a 1/1 flyer every other turn. But that's more indicative of my deck being bad and not Dovin being good. And when you're able to play things like Teferi, sometimes the rest of the cards around them can be kind of terrible.
Yeah, I don't think Dovin is just all around bad, but I do think it's more suited to like a blue-white tempo, like aggro control kind of hybrid thing.
I mean, sure, but like, what is it actually doing for you?
If you've got the evasive creatures and you're +1ing, like I've seen this card ultimate pretty quickly.
Sure, but anyway, move on. Teferi, busted. Good riddance. Absorb, Kaya. Absorb a little bit of a greedy second counterspell in a 3-color deck.
Yeah,
but
I think you probably want to mostly be blue-white if you're playing Absorb, but not a bad card to be running.
Kaya, fine. Mortify, great. Kaya, also amazing. Probably should be seeing play more in the format. It's just unfortunately Orzhov doesn't really have much representation just now. Even Esper is kind of falling out of favor.
Yeah, Esper and Orzhov definitely on the fringe side of things.
I get to talk about this card now. Smothering Dive. This is the Goldspan Dragon of early Gladiator. In some decks currently, it was worse in every way than like literally any of the 4-mana rocks we had available to us. But people played it because of Commander,
right?
And this idea that it could be good.
Yeah, I think I don't know if this is what you want to be doing in a 1v1 format, just in general.
You're better off paying 4 mana and ripping a card in half.
All right, so we have a Kefnet, to make you a little happy.
I appreciate the rest of this stuff. Rankle is a little bit aggressive, but I understand why it's there. The fact that it's an edict in a world where we didn't have many other good edicts yet, like Doomfall wasn't present in our format.
Right.
Means that it can do some cool things. It is sort of a way to answer a Dream Trawler. Not a great way, but it is a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine if you're edicting in this list, a lot of the time you might just be sending Rankle directly to hell,
Yeah, but sometimes you need to do that.
For sure.
Also, just notably, Gagroth was not yet printed as a Magic card, so Flyers had a little bit less issue existing.
Yeah. Kaya's Wrath.
Yeah.
Is
another fairly uncastable Wrath effect, but it was 4 mana. But the way that the mana cost came out, it was probably closer to 5 or 6. So
yeah, 100%.
Notably, though, they're playing the rest of the Wraths available to them, so I'm not really against Kaya's Wrath as much as I could be if they were missing any of the other good ones.
Gilded Lotus, interesting. I'm not sure I'm on that in a control list I'm building, but
remember, Commander mindset.
Yes, it is a thing. Chromium the Mutable is a card I like to see.
It's cool. unfortunately it doesn't really have a place anymore because it doesn't get around wraths.
No, yeah, and getting around rats is kind of the key. Also,
And
with so many...
remember, because a dream trawler, hexproof is much less impactful than it used to be.
Yeah, for sure. A lot cooler of a card than it is practical.
Yes.
And the rest of the top end, bells and lock, little out of place, I think. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I mean, doubt they drew it. Doubt it was good when they drew it, but it's there.
Yeah, it's definitely there. And, you know, Lockmere Serpent, you kind of get these weird blue-black top end, you know, threats that you can play.
Lockmere Serpent's still pretty good. I like Lockmere Serpent a lot better than Chromium because of the fact that it has Wrath Resiliency. Yeah,
for sure. And then
that final ability down there
can't be blocked as the true flying. But yeah, so it's Esper's Control and lands. We already kind of talked about. You plan as much as you can, vary to get the Field
because
of the Dead
of the Field of the Dead.
So this one's right next to it. We got Bug Creatures. I'm kind of interested in this.
So this is like a Sultai mid-range list, if that's what we're seeing correctly.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what mid-range used to look like.
Interesting.
Let's talk about it.
Yes, for sure.
Pilfering Imp. Let's bring that for just a moment. Thoughtseize didn't exist yet.
Right.
Divest didn't exist yet.
Interesting.
We only had Duress. Which means that while Pilfering Imp doesn't fit into any deck now, the fact that the Pilfering Imp is there, the Divest exists. If Divest exists, then the Pilfering Imp has less use. But Pilfering Imp, hand attack is still good.
It is.
I'm not sure I like it as much in this situation.
No, I think...
otherwise, I would point to the fairly useless-looking Crucible Worlds.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The lack of Gitrog monster, which I believe was in the format at this point, but not present. And then just a bit of a creature landsy shell that's also playing Emergent Ultimatum, but none of the ways to actually break Emergent Ultimatum.
Yeah, that's definitely choice.
It looks like this is gonna be like Emergent for Agent Liliana Kogla, which are just like two good cards.
Yeah. Looking a lot like Too Little Too Late for Emergent Ultimatum, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's probably fine in this deck, honestly. I'm sure it won games.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to, right?
It's just one of those things where you look at this and the rest of the deck has so much value in it that why are you going up to Emergent?
Right.
You're also already stretching your mana with Golgari Finebroker and Frilled Mystic.
Yeah, first card that caught my eye was Frilled Mystic. I think this is a tall order. Green,
it's
blue,
a bad card for many people, and I'm not gonna poo-poo them, but I am gonna say they're wrong.
Right. Risen Reef is kind of like the coiling oracle of Gladiator.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's not.
There's a few incidental elementals past just the Risen Reef in this list, even so.
That's true.
It does have a few hits, but not a huge amount.
Hostage Taker, love to see. I mean, yeah, this list is pretty standard. There's a couple.
Here's the thing. For the time, there's a lot of value here, and it was able to consistently win games and go 3-1 because it was pretty well constructed to take advantage of and work with that value.
Right.
Decks we're going to see in these older tournaments that are winning or having winning records are doing so not always because their list is perfectly tuned, but because the list is adequately tuned.
Got you.
You know, it's not playing too many absolutely stinkers of a card. Like the Frilled Mystic and the Pilfering Imp probably didn't do too much because there are only two of the deck. The Crucible Worlds probably didn't do too much because of that same thing. And the Crucible Worlds might have even done some stuff because there was a lot more land hate because of Field of the Dead. Literally every deck in the format was playing Field of Ruin and or Ghost Quarter, some both at the same time, because you needed to answer Field of the Dead. You could 100%. Not afford to not stop Golos into Field of the Dead and to win the game. Yeah,
no, I know all about it. It was my favorite trick. I just want to shout out Brokos. More Brokos, please.
Card. Cool card.
More Brokos. People are pretty sleep on Brokos. I think people know it's good, but it doesn't show up as much as it probably could.
Well,
but anyway,
Sultai midrange just doesn't really happen.
Yeah, it's true too. Don't see a lot of midrange Sultai, but pretty good list, especially for the times. Let's take a look at T17, which was Simic Flash.
Simic Flash. Okay. So this is, and tempo players, close your ears, early tempo in this format.
This is early tempo? Interesting.
This is early tempo.
I love the concept of a flash deck, and we're very on theme. We got the 3-drop Vivian, things of that nature, but there's how many flash threats are we really on? I mean, like
in the search bar, type in the word flash.
Yeah, we can do that. I forgot about that. Oh, so
Dream Eater was a very popular card back in the day, and it's still pretty good, honestly. It just like 1 mana too much for the stats it gives.
Yeah, 4/3 for 6 is rough.
But like the ability, surveil 4 and return any permanent your opponent controls to his hand, to their hand. Like it is a powerful effect. It just comes a little bit too late in the game, and we have too many more effects at this mana cost that do similarly powerful things now.
Right. Yeah, the 6-drop blue slot is a competitive one, especially with the
because like we have Torrential at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So not like too many flash threats, literally. Actually, so I guess I was kind of right.
So you're kind of hoping for this 3-mana Vivian to give the rest of your stuff flash, and also just take advantage of some good green and blue spells. The format was slow. This deck didn't play Field of the Dead.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
Incorrect, but it didn't. But it is playing both Field of Ruin and Ghost Quarter, so it's definitely aware that Field of the Dead is present, but
playing against Field of the Dead
itself, even though it is playing literally all the non-basic lands they could be playing.
Yeah.
There's not a huge amount popping out as extremely wrong here.
No.
Sharkdo Crab is, sweet. Zagana is kind of cute. Awakening of Vitu-Ghazi is another technical flash threat. Take a look at that. Instant speed. No one knows that it's instant speed.
No, I lost to this card the other day. I was just surprised it was even in somebody's list. But definitely got my best creature chumped by a 9/9 and then took 9 damage. But I mean, I think this was working with the cards that were available at the time.
Why don't you take away the flash so we're not seeing just that?
Oh, I didn't realize it did that. Okay.
Yeah, so it splits things up. But
got you. So yeah, like I was saying, I think maybe there was just working with the cards, this player had /collection /availability at the time,
and then going up and playing the Latitudes I was saying that this is the earliest versions of blue-green tempo,
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
with a few strange choices at the end. But systemic flash, trying to interact with your opponent and take them off their game while continuing to develop your board. Technically has Nexus in it, but I don't actually think it's good in this deck.
No, I don't really see that being the case.
In fact, I
myself.
don't agree with basically all of the 6s that aren't Shark Typhoon, and even Shark Typhoon could get out, especially at this point. Yeah, Shark Crab's present. I like the art enough to not kind of ignore the fact that it's not that great.
All right, well, I think that probably sums that up. Let's take a look at T18 Black Mold.
So early green-black aggro. Decently built for an early deck like this. A little bit heavy on the 4s, whereas Black Mold now is doing 1, 2s, and 3s.
Right.
And I think if you are doing 4s, then you need to go hard on your 2 mana dorks, but right now they're only on Incubation Druid here. We'll talk about the Elder Spell later.
Not a lot
Otherwise, decent bit of early interaction.
In the 2-drop kind of period, actually. Not a lot of 2-drop creatures, but...
Yeah, I would say that this deck probably fell prey to the fact that they weren't playing 1s, 2s, and 3s, in all honesty. Even back then, trying to cast and just have this many 4-drops is not always going to be good, especially when you're not able to curve into them from other things.
Yeah, that's for sure. And there's definitely some questionable 4-drops in here.
Yeah.
But
like going to 4, no Llanowar Elf, no Gilded Goose, no Paradise Druid.
Yeah.
No Elysian Caryatid, only Incubation Druid.
Yeah, it's rough. It's,
can be rough.
Definitely rough.
But also 1 second. What's that land count?
Oh no. Land count is 35. That's
right.
That's
People
rough.
were very bad at putting lands in decks. I found my first tournament list. It was an Esper control deck with 35 lands myself. Like.
Oh. So you've learned. You've learned your lesson.
I lost that tournament pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah. 35 is real low, especially for this many 4s and for this many double pips. Just a high enough amount of double pips should increase your land count, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it probably had a rough time casting some of these spells.
Yeah.
And curving out, which is not a recipe for success.
They didn't go past 4. But
seems like a hard cap at 4.
Yeah,
almost like
basically just like 4-drops deck.
Yeah. We're just gonna play medium spells until we find a way.
Yeah, it's not bad.
No.
It definitely was able to put up some results back then, A little bit lower to the ground than some of the other control decks we saw, and
what's interesting about this being Black Mold, and I'm used to Black Mold specifically referring to
named Black Mold. You mean
the name Black Mold? Yeah, I'm used to that, referring to like a very specific kind of like recursive aggro black green, and not just maybe black green aggro in general. But
it's kind of trying to do it, but there's a lot of tools that were present in the format even back then that aren't really there. Like there's no like the Black Mold list that you built in the early stages of the format with what was that 3 mana 3/3 that costs 5 to return itself, that sort of stuff.
Oh, Jungle Creeper, yeah, it wasn't around yet, I don't think, right?
What do you mean? I think Jungle Trooper was around.
Oh, it was? Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. Like that sort of stuff. And go up 5 lands and then call it like a control deck where you're trying to do early interaction. Elder Spell is interesting because there are a lot of people playing just too many walkers back then. It probably isn't correct in this deck, but
no,
it did have its uses in early stages of Gladiator, and still does in this point of Gladiator. Again, if aggro slows down.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the Elder Spell, just like, let's say you destroy a single walker, like, it's not so bad just as a spell, but for the 1 more mana and getting to, also dome any creature, you probably just want to be on your Never Returns. And your,
you see, Elder Spell only is in Never Return that wasn't in the format yet. But,
no, it wasn't. But.
Elder Spell comes in if you're having problems not dealing with singular walkers, but dealing with a plethora of walkers, which is what was happening in the early stages of the format, where people would just jam 20 planeswalkers plus removal plus 36 lands and call it a deck. Yeah.
Those were the good old days. No, I'm just kidding. So,
yeah, the good old days when playing 5 wraths meant you were a control deck, no matter what else you put around it.
Pack Rat is one that, Pack Rat's one of those cards that I don't know how good it is on any given day, but people like it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm surprised it's not showing up as a pet.
Pack Rat is one of those cards that has a lot of it's still got a lot of goodwill from when people played it and won with it in Standard. And are playing it in this format sometimes ignoring the fact that there is real costs to dedicating your resources to growing it.
For sure. Yeah, 3 and discarding your cards, definitely a steep price. But if it goes well, you could run away with the game. All right, that's Black Mold.
Yeah.
Let's take a
definitely.
look.
Black Mold, quote unquote. So 9th Grave Matters. Also, this is the days of personal deck names. So this looks like a Sultai Graveyard list.
Right.
That's playing Emergent Ultimatum with no real hits. Possibly not actually reading the card in the first place. Because they can't hit any of those non-mono-colored cards, so what are they actually getting with Emergent Ultimatum?
Not a lot.
About this for a second. I would not be scared of a pile that was Greater Sandwood, Cauldron of Eternity, Galta.
No.
Off of Emergent Ultimatum.
No, definitely not.
And then go down to the 5s, Vivian, maybe Vivian Massacre Girl, Galta would be the best one.
Yeah, Emergent Ultimatum doesn't seem great here. And just to echo my sentiment from the last episode, I don't know, personally, I'm not playing Emergent Ultimatum on a fair level. The deck we were looking at definitely did so in a much better fashion when I had made this statement initially, but like you said, there's just not really a whole lot to go get here, and it's kind of
and these are very early editions of decks, right?
Yeah.
So it's very possible that Emergent Ultimatum was never drawn.
Right.
Fastest Oracle, I would note, should not be in any deck but a deck that is very specifically using Thassa's Oracle to instantly win the game. Because the idea that you might somehow draw your deck out just is wishful thinking to the max. Games don't go that long, even in a self-mill deck.
Yeah, it's a rough patch for Thassa's Oracle. Definitely want to be comboing off if that card's in your list. But a lot of this stuff... What is this? Each player mills 3. Exile 2 target cards.
Self-mill. It's not terrible, but it's not
Yeah, I mean, if you're... I
think it barely counts as a full card, in my eyes.
Right.
If you get every single ability and they all do exactly what they want to. If you whiff on a creature on that 3rd ability, Binding the Titans kind of is terrible.
Yeah, 100%. And it's pretty slow. I mean, I guess it's probably was one of the better options at the time for, a
Still
graveyard
wasn't, honestly.
deck. Well, then, I guess not. But
yeah, especially considering that we had the 3-mana 1 in black available to us. Timurit Calls the Dead.
Okay.
Which milled 3 each twice and made tokens, and then it milled more and made bodies.
Yeah, it's definitely better.
Yeah.
What we were just looking at.
Omen of the Dead, I think one of the few decks I've ever seen playing it.
Yeah, this card.
A bit of low impact, sort of weird. What's that called? Unbury or something.
Mm-hmm.
The old effect of this: return target creature from your graveyard to your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Unearth? No. That's
not Unearth.
Different card entirely.
Raised Dead? Raised Dead?
No,
not Raised Dead.
I don't remember. Raised Dead, maybe. Anyway, it's interesting, but not exactly what you're trying to do in this deck. Witch's Vengeance, a note to how bad our Wraths were back then. Also just kind of how some poor choices in Wraths. Witch's Vengeance below Phyrexian Arena, above Excavation Mole.
Got you. Ooh. Not good here.
Yeah, I want to see Extinction Event in this list before that. I want to see Cry of the Carnarium. Well, I guess Cry of the Carnarium, sure, but I want to see Ritual Assault, maybe. Languish, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Though we didn't get Languish until a little bit later, I think.
Right.
That also might be wrong, but there's some. That's just gonna be true for a lot of these lists, where there are cards that in our current meta are very bad, and in the old meta may still have been bad, but
if nothing else, I will say that this deck, for the most part, seems to be very on theme, which is I always give some kudos to.
Yeah. Though Planeswalker deck Ashiok is
that's
a little deep.
That's very deep. That's deep. But that aside, very on theme. Are we on the Dead? We're not on the Dead. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's also incorrect.
Yeah, I think at this point you're just on the Dead.
People weren't always on it because, early format, not everyone had remembered that it was even present in the format in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So this is Jeskai Super Friends.
This is the deck you play the Elder Spell for.
Right. Yeah, so maybe they were right on the money in the same tournament with that decision.
Scroll down and show me Field of the Dead, please. Nope.
I don't think it's there. No.
So, decent actually mana choices here.
Mm-hmm.
We had just gotten Historic Anthology 1, which came with Lonely Sandbar and the like, and people were very excited about it, but pretty incorrect. Classic, terrible Mystic Sanctuary.
Yeah, Mystic
with 4 basic planes, and I think 4 non-basic planes in the entirety of your deck of your lands is quite the thing. Also, what's the full land count for this list? I think it's probably a little bit low.
37.
That's a little bit low as a full land count, but it's better than the 35 we saw.
Definitely better than 35. 37
I
is
want
like
39 in a list like this at least.
Yeah, I was gonna say 37 is definitely like the greedier side of a curve this high and this demanding. I want to see 39, 40. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise.
Lyra's there. That's a great card to have. Fires of Invention actually pretty good in this list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Fire Super Friends. So.
Yeah. That sort of stuff happening. Honestly, not the best Teferi Time Raveler list, but that card's so good that doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Karn's Temporal Sundering, a little bit excessive. Dryas Immolating Inferno in the same vein, a little bit wishful thinking, but
Right.
I'm sure they had fun with it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they had fun with it. Ever-present Inspire and Ultimatum in these early decks that really shouldn't be playing triple red spells in the first place. But that was how the format was. You know, you played the splashy endgame because you got to the splashy endgame very consistently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely remember those times.
What was Everdawn Champion?
Everdawn Champion. Tell me where that is.
Below Prison Realm. Above Gideon Blackblade.
Okay. Oh, this card. Yeah, I don't know about this card.
It's an infinite blocker. I guess that's what it's being played for, but...
Yeah, I've looked at this card a couple times, and it is an infinite blocker. My dog is crying at my door. Come on, Bella.
You get to see the dog?
the dog is below camera level, but she's a cutie. I'm sure you can hear the dog. Anyway.
I cannot.
Oh, no? Interesting. She wants my sandwich.
Oh, right. Yep.
So anyway. Yeah. Everdawn Champion.
Interesting ones. Like, we had Nixley Ram in the format already, and some people were making use of it. Definitely a little low on the early plays. Vadrock is a strange choice. Low amount of mutate targets. A lot of humans in the list just generally, I'm not sure exactly what it's doing. I guess the idea is that it can recast some of your 3-mana walkers, and that's kind of another further thing about this early things. Like, there are a lot of cool ideas that people were executing on without always being able to follow through.
Yeah.
Because everyone was kind of bad, so a deck can be a little bit bad and still be decently positioned.
Right. Every time I go to build a Jeskai list, I take a look at Vadrock, and I'm like, I'm not gonna mutate this. You know what I mean? It's just like it's not gonna happen.
But it's just not yet exactly where we want it to be.
Right. So Karn, just kind of in general, this is sort of like a note to myself. I need to play this card more. I'm always impressed with this card. Yeah, note to self about Karn. Should be playing that. And then I guess the rest of this kind of makes sense, right? Like, you just see all the walkers you would expect. Oath of Teferi is... Return it... Yeah, I mean, this might be lofty, but I guess if you're on Super Friends...
it's an adorable one.
Yeah, it's definitely adorable. Tezzeret. We've talked about this card before a little bit. Interesting card. I think Flyers on the uptick is pretty good, and you know, if you get
you're higher on it than most people.
Yeah, I think I am definitely higher on it than most people. It's really kind of I know we had the discussion on the last episode about this card sort of compared to Jace Unraveler, which I'm also high on. But I think the interesting discrepancy there is, like, do you value, because Jace obviously is going to do better against, you know, like the control matchup or the mirrors or, you know, whatever that is.
Well, I don't think the token really helps you much in the aggro matchup anymore.
No, and it's a little too. It
used to, but there's too much trample going around in every color that is trying to be aggro. Yeah,
that's 100%. So that in mind, like, I could come down on it a little, but yeah, Jeskai Flyers. You know, you kind of seeing what you expect.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So now we're going to a completely different event.
I believe
this is from the times of blog reporting, correct?
This is blog reporting, right? But it's interesting because this is actually later than the May 2nd tournament. This is May 9th.
No, this is indicative of how the various TOs ran their events.
Yeah,
it wasn't always a coordinated effort. Everyone had their own thing. Sometimes there are some truly terrible ideas were put into practice, like the Mirror Match tournament series that had exactly one event.
Oh, really? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I think this is the deck breakdown. This isn't matches. All right, cool.
So scroll down a little bit. Here we are. So some players that you should know. First off, Goblin Matron. See that there?
That's a name I
our
recognize.
Azorius Control player on coverage last week.
Okay.
Still in the format. Archer Master, not as present right now in the format, but been playing Bant Nexus since the start of the start of it. That's all I have to say about that. But
right.
Bant Reclamation was a popular deck for a very long time.
Yeah, that I remember.
So
actually,
take a look at these 8, 6. What lists are we actually looking at?
I just copped the winning records, so this time we're these 9 lists right here.
Okay, because technically the 3rd and 4th place in Flight 2 are not.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was going off this statement, but
yeah, I get it. But they're like 2-1-1 is not a, at least in my eyes, not a quote winning record.
Yeah, I get you.
I guess it's technically a winning record because you do have more wins than losses, but
for sure.
Also,
either way,
ties don't exist in our tournaments anymore. I don't think.
Is that due to the 5 rounds? What is it?
No, that's due to the arena timer.
Ah, interesting.
Because we have chess clocks, someone's gonna run out of time at some point, and it's no longer a cut to 5 final rounds.
Got you. Very interesting. All right, well let me bring down the browser. Go back to the land of arena, and I've got us on the first place of Flight 1, Sultai Lands. This is interesting. This is not as landsy as I would have thought. I know Ramanop Excavator wasn't around just yet.
The fact that the Crucible worked in the 2nd to 1st place means it's definitely more landsy than I want it to be.
Than you want it to be? What? That's interesting.
Well, Crucible just doesn't do a huge amount. Of course, this deck is on field. This is a field of the deck, a field of the dead list through and through. That's why it's called lands in the first place. Where you notice this maximize acquisition, that is to find Golos or Field of the Dead in my eyes.
Maximized acquisition. Oh, masterminds.
Yeah.
Masterminds acquisition. Yeah, I was gonna say Crucible, right? It seems just sort of like if people feel to ruin my field, I'm just trying to get it back. I think that's
Elvish Reclaimer there as well to turbo out your field of the dead. Terravore is a weird choice, but it's there. Also, did you know we had this card on Arena?
I did actually. From building lands myself, I'm not on this card. No, not at all. Especially, it is there. Maybe in time when we get some more lands into the graveyard kind of engines, but for right now,
like
I don't
still.
know. Oh, trust me, I get you.
You know,
I'm not on it myself. Some ramp.
Otherwise, decent top end, honestly, and funnily enough, they put a little bit of attempt into making a decent emergent ultimatum pile.
You think so? What are some of the piles that stand out to you?
Well, they have the Planeswide Celebration in, right? Which means you can insta-ult some Planeswalkers if you have the Planeswide Celebration pile. But they forgot to add in any Planeswalkers that win the game when they ult.
That's a pretty necessary piece of the insta-ult.
It's like the only one is that Nissa, and every other Planeswalker that would win the game, it does not fit into the emergent ultimatum requirements.
Right.
But in the days of Nexus, Emergent getting Nexus something tutor is often pretty good.
Right. Death Sprout is a card we've seen pop up in a couple times just in this episode. I guess this was...
Well, it's not bad removal. It's just very expensive and color heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, expensive and color heavy was the name of the game. Also,
right.
The deck is just being entirely incorrect, especially back then, by not playing Questing Beast.
Yeah, I think Questing Beast is probably one we're on for the next long time. No... Got Muldrota, Multani. Yeah,
No
so
Kogla.
I mean...
I'd like to see a Kogla on this list.
Yeah, Kogla's one of those cards that every time it gets played against me, I'm just like, why isn't this in my green decks? But we're really going hard on bringing lands back to the battlefield from the grave. If we're going as far as the Mending of Dominaria. But interesting, you know, Zav the Multifarious is kind of a cute one. Like I kind of want this card
because every once in a while,
mm-hmm.
you get the absolute luck sack draw of Lazav, Surveil 1, see your only Uro.
Yeah.
Untap 3 mana, turn Lazav into an Uro.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But
it's the fastest way to get an Uro into play, but it's very inconsistent and kind of awful otherwise.
Right. Yeah, and then, you know, the rest of this is just kind of surrounded, you know, kind of just surrounding getting Field of the Dead with good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of all you needed to do
on the Field of the Dead stuff back then.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, so that's kind of that. Let's continue. We got TF2. I don't know what HL stands for, to be honest. So this one might be a surprise.
Sultai Highlander, probably.
Probably actually.
Yes, that is true Supreme. You could also have a turn 3 Uro if your opponent plays Hushbringer to copy Honor Guard, which is why you don't play those cards right now.
So Sultai, I mean, this is just, we got Crucible, so we got to find out. We got Field of the Dead. Are we going?
Also looks like Lotus Veil. Is that there?
I saw Lotus Veil, I think. Lotus Field.
Or Valky, yeah. Lotus Field. Bit of a old non-bow in these field decks where people play these Lotus Fields because they needed to make their Crucible effects better. But honestly, the Crucible effects were just kind of bad and shouldn't have been in decks in the first place, but people played them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to the Lotus Field and destroyed their land count for Field of the Dead, the best card in their deck.
Yeah.
So they could play those lands from their graveyard with their bad Crucible Worlds. Because unless you're doing very specific things, unfortunately Crucible Worlds is just kind of bad in this format right now. We don't have the density of fetch lands to make it a consistent thing to find, and playing like the cycling lands to make it work is also kind of bad, in my experience. 100%.
I mean, I think unless you're on like a super, like a multicolor...
The fact that Gitrog Monster means I'm a little less annoyed about the cycling lands, because they're pretty good in Gitrog Monster lists, but like... It's been very hard to justify Gitrog being present in a lot of decks going forward recently, just because the cost that Gitrog brings for what it actually is has not proven itself to be better than just a combo piece.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. I have a 5-color lands list that I enjoy quite a bit, but it's literally playing as many lands relevant cards as possible, right? And that's, so when it comes to the Gitrogs and the Crucibles of the world, you know, they make more sense in something that's very all in like that. But just as kind of these one-off, like, let's make sure Field comes back, or, you know, Let's Play Lotus Fields that Crucible has more worth. You're kind of lost on me with those decisions. But the rest of this, right, is kind of just standard Sultai value package.
Yeah, they're decent early creatures, honestly. I'm surprised to see it. And a little bit heavy on the 4s, like always in these early decks, but not too heavy on the 6s.
No. Not too heavy on the 6s. Agent of Treachery, still an all-star. We see a Kogla, so we're happy about that. Dreadhorde General's a beating, and probably will be for the next long time. Cavalier... I don't know how much I like Cavalier in general.
Too much black mana.
Too much, words from my mouth. Too much black mana. And if it just destroyed something, like maybe we could justify the black, but you gotta sack something, like I'm not really super high on that card.
Yeah, but you can sack it, and then when it dies, you bring it back.
I sense sarcasm, or at least I hope there's some there. But anyway.
That is the posted benefit to that sacrifice, but yes, it's not exactly the play pattern you enjoy. Play it right now because the 4/5 lifelinker, and if you can afford that cost, sometimes the sacrifice is good enough. Like, I'm fine trading my Gilded Goose in to kill my opponent's Gagroth. Like,
that's a good point,
right? But you need to be able to cast it, and in a 3-color deck, that's just not always going to happen. Even in a 2-color deck, if you're skewed to the wrong mana cost, Cavaliers will not be very good.
Right. And I mean, much like, we were talking about my black-green list playing Triple Pip Vivian, and it's like, Triple Pip, you need to be mostly monocolored or very aware of how you're building your land base. But anyway, I mean, like I said, pretty standard Sultai value package. Thought Erasure. More Thought Erasure, please, ladies and gentlemen. The card's very good. So 2 Sultai decks in first and second. And then we have 4-color pod. What's going on with this? This is very interesting. I kind of like this reverse ladder here. We're going downstairs on the curve. That's tends to be a good sign, but you got to make sure things are good on the way there, right?
See, I don't know even if you can save Cavalier Thorns for too long in the Bant deck, because Bant had the best mana of the decks in these formats, and really wanted to grind value, and Cavalier Thorns, in my opinion, is kind of the best of the Cavaliers for that effect. Every single line of text on that card is relevant, especially in the control matchup.
Arcbow might be a little too spicy for my taste.
Yeah, this was popular back in the day. Return to Nature, another one I'd point out. Thunderherd Migration, people were very desperate for ramp.
Right.
I don't even know if there was a single dinosaur in this deck.
Let's find out.
There were 3. Okay.
3 dinosaurs.
Like 5% of the time, you'll get a 2-mana Thunderherd Migration.
Right. Get yourself a little ramping.
Also, what in the world is Spelt Ward Ignis? What is that card?
Ignis.
It's the only red 2-drop.
Oh, okay. Sacrifice him for 3. Gain control of target creature.
Oh,
or less.
Okay. So the idea was that you'd use this, and this is a worse, active treason.
Right.
But you then active treason your opponent's thing, and you have your Vanafor in play, and you sacrifice their thing, and you get your thing. But you have Vanafor in play, so you're winning anyway. Why is it there?
Yeah, I mean, as you were describing that whole situation, I could kind of hear the sleigh bells in the distance because it seemed like Christmas time. But Corridor Monitor, I guess you're getting this as just like a little pod chain kind of interaction.
Yeah, but you only have 2 1-drops. I'm not even sure I want it.
Yeah, nah.
Power Scout is better because it allows you to go up from your your group of 2s to 4s. But
right.
No, it cannot. Smeltwort Ignis, I believe, says CMC 3 or less. Or sorry, power 3 or less. Okay. Okay, well, yeah, I guess it can technically untap a Vanifar.
Right.
Still not good, but it can technically untap a Vanifar. Okay.
It's true. It could untap Vanifar.
Now,
but I don't know unless there's like some combo lines. Like if we're just going straight value.
There's no combo here. I don't see any combo here.
So at that point,
like if you give me a second, I can look at it, but it doesn't look like we got anything happening combo. Oh, wait a second. There's a combo.
What's that?
Lumbering Battlement, Spark Double Mirror Image. Those 3 cards combo. This was the old Vanifar line. I don't actually remember how it plays out from Vanifar. There might have been a way to make it happen. But what I do know is that once you get battlements and 2 copy effects, which you only have 2, we only had Mirror Image and Spark Double back then. Where you can battlements, copy it once, and put the original battlements under the copied battlements, and then once more copy the battlements and put the copied battlements under your battlements, which brings back 1 battlements, and that loops enter the battlefield effects. Any other creature in play at the time also gets pulled into that loop, so you can replay enter the battlefield effects of all your creatures indefinitely. And there's like a few in here. There's a few cards in here that like when you do that, like a Scampering Scorcher kind of does that. I imagine Scampering Scorcher was how they won with
I see.
The chain. I don't actually know exactly. Like, it seems very mana intensive, and it probably was, because that's how all these combos back in the day were. I'm surprised to not see a little bit more enter the battlefield synergy when that's how you're ending the game. But
interesting, we're on the Soul Woe Strider.
Probably for a free sack outlet for some sort of loop.
Right.
I don't see things that loop with Broodmoth, but maybe I'm wrong.
Should lie. You know, this is 4-color pod's actually one of the more popular decks. And
it is 5-color, but
5-color. But
I don't actually know why it's called 4-color pod. Maybe because it doesn't view the Woad Strider as a black splash, but it is a black splash and it is a 5-color deck.
Technically, yeah.
The second you end up playing a basic land of that color, you are that color, in my opinion.
Oh, there's a swamp in here. I actually was looking at the lands, trying to figure out where the black splash was coming from, and I guess it was just this one Triumph, but there's a swamp. A swamp seems pretty incorrect unless we're...
I don't know. I mean, the swamp allows you to use like your Farfinder to find it, but...
Yeah, I guess...
Like it's kind of correct if you're doing a black splash with the amount of basic land search they're playing. But I don't see why the black splash is there yet.
Yeah, neither do I. But I was gonna say, you know, this deck aside, 4-color pod piloted, you know, or kind of brought to fame by this player Pat Verduzco in the Highlander scene. It has this way, like when you have the combo lines anyway, it has this way of like just kind of being a creature deck that kind of goes, oops, I win. And you know, this list, maybe not these cards exactly, but this idea in Gladiator, kind of inspiring. Maybe there's something there with
Paradorks,
the newer stuff.
Yes.
Paradorks, yeah, for sure. But yeah, not a lot of reason to go red. It looks like
it's for
anyway.
Scampering Scorcher lines, I assume. I don't.
Right.
Red seems strange, and especially the amount of red. Like you see all those red lands.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. But I guess maybe if you're banking on Scampering Scorcher and winning you the game, you want to make sure it can happen when it can happen. I don't know.
Yeah,
Interesting list,
I know.
though.
It's hard to say. Hard to say.
Definitely, for sure. All right, so that was 4-wheeler pod. Let's take a look at another band.
Here we are, Archermaster on Bantrack.
Yes. So this actually isn't. This maybe isn't the exact list from that tournament. I had to. The list that was listed on the results page wasn't actually like readable for whatever reason. So I DM'd Archermaster personally and asked them if they had a
access.
list that list or just something, and they said this was the oldest list they could find. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
This might not be that, but
this is history right here. History. Archermaster, and notably, I said I don't see Archermaster playing Fairy Formation Emergency Powers. Turns out that whoever was playing Fairy Formation Emergency Powers in the last event we looked at either inspired Archermaster or was inspired by, because they're there again.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's very similar, almost word for word to that list from before.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely convinced that the list we saw before wasn't Archermaster, just not under the Archermaster name, because Aether Hub didn't always put the name. Aether Hub results didn't always have the Discord name. Sometimes they would do like first name, last name, much like Melee can do, or other names you give it.
Right.
So very similar to the list we looked at not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Still on the Dovin. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but this looks almost card for card.
It does look pretty card for card. I don't think Barrier Breach is one we saw in the other list.
I saw it.
It was? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we're seeing anything we didn't before, to be honest with you. We weren't on... There's no Flood of Tears here.
There. Yeah, Flood of Tears is gone. Still not on Time Wipe.
No.
Still on Mythos of Snapdax. Yeah, there was 0 real aggro. Not true, but there was only one real aggro deck, and that was the mono white deck we saw as the first deck we looked at today.
Mm-hmm.
Mono white was a thing, but it wasn't played by enough people, and the card pool was a little inconsistent.
Yeah.
It did go 4-0 in that event, so
it
was good.
Mm-hmm.
Aggro was still good in the format, just people didn't play it. People
Right.
weren't looking to play it. So yeah, I'm looking at this. I'm not too angry at most things. I would say I'd be kicking myself for not running a Golos if I was this player.
It seems like an interesting exclusion. Especially when you're on the Field of the Dead.
Yeah.
We didn't have, Cascading Cataract.
And also just from the other colorless utility lands.
Yeah, for sure. Ruin, Caves, Blast Zone.
Yep. So, also, what's the land count of this? Because it feels like we're still in the incorrect land count. Yeah,
37.
that's still going correct.
Little low for as high as you're trying to go, for as much mana as you're trying to sink into various things.
At least this is a seven basic Island Mystic Sanctuary deck.
Yeah,
At least it's a 7
true.
basic Island Mystic Sanctuary. So you're casting it more often, but still not often enough for it to be anything but a terrible tap land, in my eyes.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough for Mystic Sanctuary in Gladiator.
But,
right now.
Wilderness Reclamation, powerful enough effect that it's continuing to be amazing and warping the format to this day. So sometimes you can play a few bad cards around that.
Yeah.
I want to see more instant speed, draw, and just general interaction. There's a lot of sorceries in this deck for Wilderness Reclamation to be as useful as it could be. Notably, Teferi Time Raveler means that the sorceries are less impactful for your plan when you're doing Wilderness Reclamation stuff, and it was the best card in the deck at the time.
Yeah,
But
for sure. I gotta say, one card that kind of interests me is Tameo, Collector of Tales.
Tameo, yeah.
Tameo, yeah. I'm surprised people play this card as much as they do. I don't think it's bad or anything. It just surprises me. Like, people really value that digging.
The dig is good. More than the dig, the -3 is really good.
Yeah.
And you see that static.
Yeah, the static's very relevant as well.
It's very relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And often overlooked. Like, I can't tell you how many times I played a Tameo and then immediately got thought seized.
Yeah, I could 100% see that. This card's like sneaky powerful, at least to me anyway. Like,
Yeah.
It just kind of.
The thing about it is that it's just in the aggro matchup, it's just an advantage engine because they don't care about attacking it. It comes in with six loyalty. That's too much damage for aggro to really value pushing into it. But if they don't do that, you're gonna be able to rebuy that wrath you just mulled over.
Right. Yeah, it's
the fact that the -3 consistently is pretty good in the control matchup, and then once you hit combo, Tameo is a repeatable regrowth effect, which means Omniscience loves it.
Yeah, that's a fact. Well, I mean, this was like a pretty.
We're no longer seeing "Didn't Say Please" and the like. But Absorb is still a little bit wishful thinking in a 3-color list, in my opinion. And I'd rather see just regular cancel, personally.
Yeah, see that. All right, so that was another Bant Reclamation. So that's... Oh, we got one more, actually, in Flight 1. And that's the Rock.
Okay, so this isn't a wall of 4 drops like the last one. We've actually got some 5s and 6s.
This is a pretty even distribution between 2, 3,
I kind of like this. The mana's bad, but like the colors and just the tap lands means it's going to be kind of slow. And then in addition to that, they're not really respecting their tap land budget and playing a bunch of extra tap lands because of the Field of the Dead, which I completely understand back in the day. I still think if you are on Field of the Dead like this, you do want to have a Golos as your 5 drop even now.
Right.
But the rest of this, honestly, pretty well laid out.
Yeah, for the most part. I'm not big on a memory leak, but I do. There is a couple dorks here, and some ramps. So
I think is a respect to how impactful Uro is to this deck.
Uro playing against Uro, you mean?
Yeah, playing against Uro.
Okay. Yeah.
Exile removal is pretty important.
Oh, exile. Okay, that's
exiles from hand and exiles from graveyard. Both are very good.
Notable. I thought this was just one of those standard 3-drop hand attacks, but that's what we get from reading.
Memory leak
cards
is the only 3-drop hand attack I'd even consider playing even now.
Yeah,
it's not terrible right now. The fact that it has cycling for 1 means that its cost of inclusion is pretty low, especially in a deck that is looking to kind of churn through itself.
Yeah, for sure. Exile definitely changes the outlook on that.
Good suite of removal. I'd say maybe once a little bit more. At this point, we did have the non-legend kill spell.
Cast down.
Cast down is not present. Pack Rat is, and probably was fine in this form, in this meta, but I'm not a fan going forward.
Yeah.
Love to see a Massacre Girl. Great card.
Yeah, Massacre Girl, definitely a good one. So we're also on. I was gonna say we're also on Agonizing Remorse. So
and Duress.
And duress. Wow. So yeah.
It's looking to have some hand attack here.
For sure.
Elspeth Nightmare also does that sort of stuff. Notably, this deck is this side scape shift combo deck.
Is that so?
Where you got your Dread Presence, you got your Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Mm-hmm.
And
you got Escape Shift.
Yeah, so you can Dread Presence with Escape Shift with a Dread Presence out and get all swamps and do a bunch of damage and draw a bunch of cards otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And with a Dryad, everything becomes everything, so you can Escape Shift and get a Field of the Dead and everything else. And then also, they're all swamps, and also Dread Presence sees all of them and kills your opponent by that. Like, I imagine that combo was not missed when Escape Shift was added into the deck, and the Dryad Elysian Grove and Escape Shift are probably in for that express purpose.
Excuse me, I need to get some water. Yeah, I've definitely died to my fair share of Escape Shift Dread Presence. No real like investment in making that happen, it looks like. Probably just sort of a stumble upon thing.
Yeah,
Steal
Escape
a game or
Shift
two.
in a deck with Field of the Dead is just fine, which means like whatever.
Right.
Field of the Dead really warped the format.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think that's probably like was the most necessary ban of all the bans so far.
Next to Uro, yeah. Sorry, next
Oko?
to Oko, yeah.
Yeah, this is pretty standard black-green stuff,
Yeah,
especially for the time.
I like the top end, honestly. Everything there is decent. Maybe a few too many sixes. Yeah, Field more necessary than Oko, but I think people would warp their deck more for Oko in the early stages than they would for Field. Once people started realizing that they needed to warp, they should be warping their deck for Field, and it already got banned.
Yeah. Yeah, Field's ubiquity is a big problem. But yeah, that's black green.
Yeah.
Kinda just love to see it, actually. Now we're on to Flight 2. So
Right, so this was a weird way of doing events where they didn't want to do 4 rounds. But they had too many people to do 4 rounds.
Right.
So they did 2 separate events of 4 rounds because this was a hand-paired event.
Hand pairings is like my hat goes directly off to that. But that being said, looks like Gruul won Flight 2. Let's see what Gruul was looking like back in the day.
It's adorable.
I'm kicking off to you.
So, this tournament and this type of Gruul list was we were bad at building Gruul back then.
Okay.
And this list is kind of a show of that. Because you're playing 7 drops, but you're not playing Field of the Dead. You're playing Terror of Mount Velis, which, yeah, sure, it ends the game. But why not just play more creatures that are 4 and 5 mana that end the game before you have to get to 7 to do it? Dracoseth is powerful, but a lot of mana. Thorn Mammoth is just really small, even back then. And Enray's Forerunners was kind of like a lot of the top end in this rule list, in my experience and opinion, is kind of excessive and pointless.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just
they're
don't
doing
need to
some
go that
correct
high.
things. You got your Vivian Monsters Advocate there. That's doing some cool stuff. And a lot of cool, like the creatures. A lot of the creatures I'm looking at look right. I just don't. What's the creature count here? Because it feels low.
41.
Yeah, that's actually kind of low for a Gruul deck that's going this high in the creatures. Because, can you type in T equals creature? Thank Thank you. We're very even on the creatures across the mana curve here,
Right.
which means we have too much top end. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Also, a democratic creature curve like this actually decreases your ability to curve out more often than not. Like, I know the math isn't really there for you when you've got this kind of thing going on.
And especially when you're trying to use like a Dahmer's Ambush to remove a thing, you're not always like, and you got a 5-drop in hand.
Right.
But you know, big dumb creatures still going to be good.
For sure. For sure.
And,
What of Sunder Shaman?
I don't like the mana costs, but I understand why it's in. It's a good 4-drop, and I'd like to see more cards like that in this list than I would want to see the Perforos or the 6+s.
Yeah, for sure. Mana cost very steep. Red, green. It's gonna be a hard time casting that. You've championed this card a couple times in our talks.
It's still good, honestly. Yeah. People have kind of moved away from it, but it's actually quite a good card. Yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount to say. There's a lot of stuff happening here that's about what we expect. Few things that I'm surprised are missing, like 3-mana Domri, I think really fits in this list and it's not there. And I'm surprised to see Labyrinth of Scophos and Archer Araska in a list like this. That seems...
Oh, wow.
That seems like an interesting thing to spend your colorless land slots on.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to see
a little bit
myself.
Excess in mana when you have all these other things you can be casting. But a lot of value here.
For sure.
And if it gets the curve out in the situations it can curve out, you're gonna keep dropping threats, right? Which is probably what happened.
Keeper of Fables. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, maybe not standard in terms of the card selection, but the idea, let's just play monsters.
The idea is there.
Right.
Gruul didn't really come into full effect for another week or so.
Gotcha. Well, all right. Let's take. So we have. Where's F2-2? Another Bant Nexus. I imagine.
This might have been. Can we go back to the blog post?
For sure.
Okay. So number 4 that we looked before was not Archermaster's Bant Reclamation list.
Right. This one is though.
This is Archermaster's Bant Reclamation list, and I know that because the second I saw it, I recognized it. Let's go back.
Right.
So this. I'm sorry, Archermaster, if you're somehow listening to this in the future. This is the correct list. This is Archermaster's list. And I know this has Amonkhet cards in it because this is the earliest version of Archermaster's list we can find, which is why your explanation. Can you just reiterate that so people who might be a little bit new have it?
Again, so I had looked for the original list from this tournament, but it wasn't available for whatever reason. So I had personally reached out to Archermaster for the oldest possible list that was available, and that's this.
Yeah, so this is the furthest back in the archive that Archermaster can find, which unfortunately means I think this is past the time that Field of the Dead was banned. If we scroll down, yeah. So, but this is the beginning of Bant Reclamation and the mindset that people had around Bant Reclamation. Let's get into that.
Yes. I mean, you tell me. I'm kicking off.
Board wipes are king in this early stage of the format.
Right.
Wrath of God came out and Bant Reclamation shot up in popularity because of that. But Shadow of the Sky, Cleansing Nova, Time Wipe, and the Realm Cloak Giant were standard in every single list that we saw going forward before Amonkhet back then. you had your Teferi Time Raveler, you had your Wilderness Reclamation, you had your Nexus of Fate, you had your Search for Escanta, you had those core things, you had some draw. Also, this was before Ugin was printed, but Ugin got in the second that was printed. This was before Sublime Epiphany was printed, but we noticed that Sublime Epiphany is there as well. So there's a few things here that I need to note will not be present in the deck beforehand, but definitely are in the vein of how this deck wants to function. Where the Mirari's Wake had just come in, all this stuff is exactly how the sort of evolution of what Bant Rec sort of went. If you want to take the list that you could salvage from this that we saw a little bit earlier and compare it to where this is not much older. And especially if you take out just the Amonkhet cards, it's really not much older than that list. And it's indicative of just how much and to what extent Archermaster championed the quote correct build of reclamation lists, where you see this low density of 5+ cards and a more focus on grinding value from your instance and your removal spells.
Right. And notable exclusion here as well, no Idyllic Tutor. We saw Idyllic Tutor in the other list.
It's not needed.
But not here. Yeah.
It never was needed. People would play it because they wanted to get Elspeth Conqueror's Death and Wilderness Reclamation, and as the format developed, it was noticed that Idyllic Tutoring for a thing was just basically making things cost way too much mana, and you can just play a good card instead. Which is what they're doing here. Now, I can't talk too much on the card choices because this is 2 sets after we're talking about here. Yeah, no Nissa is very important to note because we'll talk about that next week probably. But Nissa stopped being good in these decks that were so removal and sweeper heavy because you're just killing your own lands.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Lunch.
But yeah, that's amen. But yeah, I could see that, right? Because you don't want to animate the lands just to.
And also, everyone else is playing Wrath now as well. Like, Nissa permanently animating your lands was actually a very real cost that continued up until the point of her banning, and honestly, in my opinion, would have brought her down to a power level that really made it much less impactful than was listed as a reason for banning. Like, I think that Nissa was on the way out in the tournament scene when she was banned.
Right.
You barely saw Nissa outside of specifically mono green.
Yeah.
And some 2-color decks that were more focused on green.
So I'm kind of interested in. I want to see. I guess Mirari's Wake is just that good for the doubling. Like
It's your second Wilderness Reclamation in this list.
Yeah.
And with the way that this deck played out, that mattered a lot. Because Wilderness Reclamation and Wilderness Reclamation decks back in the day, they won the game because of the mana advantage that Wilderness Reclamation allowed them to have. It effectively doubled their mana, so they were able to do things on their turn at sorcery speed while still having instant speed stuff to do, often helped with the Teferi Time Raveler.
Yeah.
I think we can move on. There's not much more to talk about, especially considering that this list is as sort of it's not the right list, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, I got you. Interesting to see, though. We're on to 5-color Niv. I'm kind of interested in this. Let's see what this is looking like.
It's a shame Seismic Lawns isn't about. They could have a lot of opinions. I also have a lot of opinions, especially looking at those ultimatums in this deck. That's Nicol Bolas. 1, 2, 1. So many things that Niv misses.
Yeah, there's the triple color spells.
So many triple pip spells. Both color-wise and also, like, bedevil-wise.
Ooh, bedevil. Yeah, I don't think you're casting this.
You're gonna try.
You're
Like-
you're definitely gonna try, but
You see, if you told me that this list was playing World Tree, I'd be like, oh, okay. But, I mean, you're not and you can't. Though
Exactly.
this is technically the best Field of the Dead list we got if you scroll down. 'Cause
That's very true.
how many lands is this deck playing?
Hopefully quite a bit. 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
First really correct land count I've seen here.
Yeah, very respectable.
Though
land count.
honestly, I want one or two more. Karn's Temporal Sundering is a little excessive.
We're on temporal in here? Oh no.
Yeah. And then, like, I don't like Genesis Ultimatum. I don't like Eerie Ultimatum in this type of list. It's so hard to cast. Nicol Bolas Dragon God, similarly, just impossible to cast.
Yeah, I've played this card in Grixis and it's been impossible to cast. So
Yeah.
5-color Nib is like, I don't know about
And
that.
you play it because it's fine as a 7-drop because it's such a powerful card. But like,
Right.
this card in this deck is like maybe a pseudo 10-drop, right?
Yeah, actually, it's that triple black, blue, red will really have you not casting this card. Please believe me. Fires, we love to see fires.
Yeah, fires helps this a lot, honestly. The fact that you're able to drop the fires and now you don't need to worry about your mana cost for your Nicol Bolas. But
Right.
that's only one card.
Mhm.
Solar Blaze. Can you read that card to me?
Solar Blaze. Each creature
You know what this
deals
card is?
Yeah, deals damage equal to itself, to its power. Deals damage to itself equal to its power. Reading is good. Yeah.
Played this card in the format
Uh-huh.
and then discovered how terrible it was.
Yeah, I don't have a
Because
lot of
if you're
faith
against
in
a
this
2/3
card.
or 4/5 or anything with even 1 point of power less than its toughness, this card does nothing, and in the case of like Ripjaw Raptor, is actively good for them.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I definitely wouldn't play. mean,
I do like
this.
Justice Strike though, which is interestingly and paradoxically different but the same.
Mm-hmm.
Because like it's like really nice to be able to use an instant speed for 2 mana to kill like your 6/6s and the 7/6s. Like Justice
Right.
Strike is really good, but Solar Blaze is really bad.
Yeah, 100%. Justice Strike, probably one of the more underrated pieces of removal in the
Yeah, I'm
format.
surprised to not see it more, but
Mhm.
I guess
100%.
Jeskai really isn't seeing much control play, and Boros is also a little bit underrepresented. So that's
Right.
like the colors that it would be in just aren't really being played.
Mm-hmm. Seems like for our cards that aren't trying to fill some Niv slot, we're going blue, but I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know.
here's the other thing though, like looking at the lands, there's not much preference into any color it seems. So
No, not at
this
all.
is a very much throw it in and pray sort of deck.
Yeah, that's 100% facts.
Also, Chase
no,
Wielder of Mysteries.
yeah,
you know,
that one's
Weird choices here. Weird choices.
100%. I will say that Idyllic Tutor for fire seems like kind of paramount here, just so you
I
can
would
cast
want
stuff.
Idyllic Tutor in this deck because Fires is so core to your plan.
100%. Honestly, this deck probably has gotten maybe not a lot better, but it's gotten a few key cards.
It has gotten a lot better. Seismic Lawns has been piloting a 5-color sort of Niv Mizzet mid-range list to pretty good success recently,
Okay.
and it doesn't look at all like this, but
No.
a few of the key things are there. Like I think they still play Enter the God Eternals because it's still a good card. Like there's still a lot of good cards here that are present, but
Mm-hmm.
the much lower to the ground, much better interaction, and a less Hail Mary style land base.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like guaranteed tapped Castle Vantress.
Oof. Yeah, it's not a good one.
So
Not a good one.
that is unfortunately is going to be some aspect of these tournament historical archive sort of things, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm so excited for you to get to the next set of tournaments, because those are the ones I started playing in.
Right.
And I get
Yeah.
to cringe at my deck list with you.
Yeah, that'll be pretty funny. But I want to see Seismic's list because like I like the idea of this, and I think there's some pretty obvious optimizations from recent times.
Sure. Park your butt in mid-range and give Seismic a ping. They'll talk with you about it.
For sure. I mean, I'm sort of trying to crack the mid-range code a little bit, see what I can do with different color combos, but I haven't been very successful lately.
Have you jammed my Gruul mid-range list recently?
No, I will jam that though. I will definitely jam that.
I think playing playing through the lines that particular list brings will probably give you some direction on where you want to go.
For sure.
Notably, this 5-color Niv list was 2-1-1, which I believe also ended up tying with this final contestant.
Jeskai Sharks.
2-1-1. Jeskai Sharks.
So let's take a look at this. I guess Sharks is strictly referring to Shark Typhoon, right? Like.
Yeah, so it looks like a bit of a early Jeskai control list. Got some bad cards in here. We got Urza's Ruinous Blast. Terrible card.
Don't want to be playing that.
We got some good cards too. Time Wipe. Teferi Hero Dominaria is still amazing. Elspeth Conquers Death still good. Ryle is it Viceroy, nice card to have. Expansion Explosion. One would have thought. I think one would have thought is the biggest reason to be Jeskai control right now. It's such a beating, but it doesn't matter in the aggro matchup that.
Yeah.
Like if control becomes more widespread, I kind of want to go Jeskai for one would have thought to combat it.
Yeah.
In my thoughts.
Jeskai, it's funny because like I've played
Shivan Fire, yeah. So the early stuff is not too bad, right? You've got a lot of your early interaction pretty well set here. No, didn't say please.
No.
Absorb again, pipe dream, but it's there and people play it. No ionize, which is just entirely incorrect in a deck like this. It's easier to cast than double blue, and infinitely easier to cast compared to absorb.
For sure.
But you know what isn't here that should be here?
Tell me.
Teferi.
3-drop, not present.
Yep.
Interesting. Very, very
The most
interesting.
powerful card in your deck is not present, which means you are just hurting yourself.
Right.
What's our land count?
Land count is 38.
Okay, that's respectable. No Field of Dead, which is incorrect, but they are on Karn's Bastion and Mobilized District, one of which is correct.
Yeah, Karn's Bastion is
another
yeah, I mean, might be some presence under the tree with that one. But the Jace Wheeler of Mystery is also
we saw that a lot in the early formats. I don't really understand it. 3 blue is so hard.
Yeah, and it just doesn't do anything that I enjoy. I just don't think that
you consistently draw a card, which can win a control mirror if it sticks, but like.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to draw cards on walkers, I guess Unraveler of Secrets wasn't out yet. No.
Yeah, but like a rock, literally a rock painted with the words "draw a card" on it would be better than this Jace World of Mysteries, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
We had Arcane Encyclopedia, I believe, at this point in the format, and I think that would just be better. Also, Treasure Map was present, and I would love to see that instead of that Jace Wheel of Mysteries if we're trying to beat a control deck. Karn Scion of Urza.
Yeah.
There is what I want these Jaces to always be. Karn Scion of Urza. Supreme hits it right on the head. Explains why they've won so many events and also are probably the most decorated control player in this format.
Yeah, for sure. Urza, Karn Scion of Urza, just a card that I'm going to spend a wild card on that ASAP. But, what was I going to say? Kazmina. So let me preface this with just saying that, like, I know that this card's not very good. I just want it to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but what do you think?
It's not the worst card in the world.
No, it's not.
It's not that exciting.
You
I look at it and I just see the mana cost and what it does and want it to be Shalai.
Yeah, 100%. It is hard to put that card in over Shalai. That much is for sure. On the Soul Chemister's Insight, I guess that was one of the only.
At that point.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's.
Reign of Revelation came out a few weeks later.
Yeah. Interesting. Definitely some. Like these ultimatums, I think people just wanted to cast ultimatums.
Yeah, Inspired Ultimatum used to be saw on every single Jeskai control list. We also saw a lot of Jeskai control lists. A extreme amount, honestly.
Much more.
Inspired Ultimatum. I doubt many of them actually was able to cast the card, but they sure felt good playing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, the rare Nexus in this list. Not every control deck was playing Nexus at this point. We saw it come into vogue much more once Control kind of took over the tournament scene, where Nexus was being brought in to counter the control decks, where you have this way to punish if they tap out. And that was kind of how it was used for a good long time before Wilderness Reclamation lists got really popular.
Right. So let's talk Electro Dominance. What do you think about this card? I think this card probably doesn't make it into lists outside of Control. Maybe I don't know. But what do you think?
It's not Banefire. It's not Purposeful Intervention. Maybe it's the third spell of that type that you play, but I want my X spells to be a little bit more efficient and a little bit harder to interact with.
Yeah, I think to me, right, like this feels like a piece of tech for Control lists so that they can Electro Dominance on somebody's end step and cast a sorcery speed threat that they wouldn't be able to otherwise.
Yes,
that's why I said,
that's fine.
Right.
I just think that playing a Purposeful Intervention answers the threat better, and you can cast that sorcery speed threat at sorcery speed.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That is true. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played with this card yet myself, but I've looked at it a few times and just been like,
I don't know. I've not been impressed.
Yeah, I could see that. I can definitely see that. Efficiency is definitely king, and that's the last list we have prepared for today. It was a good little dive back into the past.
I do have a list you can grab if you want. I found it.
You found a list? All right, let's take.
One second. I need to close you down.
Okay.
And so you see what I've done is I went and I sorted my messages in the Discord by oldest.
Okay.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And by doing that, I can go find this list that I submitted for I submitted this on the 2nd of 5/2/2020. Which might not even be a tournament that I think that actually might be the tournament we looked at not too long ago. That might be the first tournament we looked at that I just didn't do well enough to come up in what you were looking at.
Let's see. Let me bring the browser up. Oh, thank God it's on Goldfish, because Goldfish actually exports to Arena in a way that's good and not awful.
I'm sure you had so much pain with that.
Yeah, there was a little pain. There was a couple lists on Tapped Out, and Tapped Out just does the format that doesn't work at all. You know what I mean? With like the expansion numbers and whatnot. When you try to import it, so that was pain. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. The Scryfall deck creator I had zero input issues importing anything. Like split cards, like anything.
Scryfall is pretty good at keeping up with actually exporting things correctly.
Yeah, I think I might be giving Scryfall a go deck builder.
Yeah, and considering that,
So we're missing a discovery. Can we add that?
oh, sure. If you have that about, throw that in chat, please, Andre. Andre might have found an earlier version of Bant Reclamation from Archer Master.
Yeah, please send a link to that in chat. Hopefully you don't get out chatted, but no, okay, it's good. Thank God.
You don't have Nightbot. Nightbot's the one that hates links.
Copy.
MTG bot knows that Magic streams use a lot of deck list links from chat, so they don't go aggressively at it.
Got you. All right, let me bring down this.
Let's look at this Esper list first, because let's talk about how bad I was at building decks back then.
All right, you start.
First things first. Let's let the elephant out in the room. Click on the graph and show me the land count.
Oh no! Don't say it isn't so. UFO.
Yep. So I can tell. Cat Moozy jumps right on the first story of this deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Go ahead. You tell me.
I came from. I have been playing Gladiator a little bit before I came to this server.
Mm-hmm.
Because before I joined the server, I was a regular in Wheeler's stream.
Right.
Where I would queue up and fight Wheeler every once in a while with my weird teamer list, or eventually it ended up being a little bit more gruel. I played monsters.
Right.
And back then, around that time, Wheeler had been heavily championing, just heavily playing a blue-white omniscience list. So in my mind, I needed to be able to target combo.
Right.
There was no combo in this tournament.
How many Unmoored Ego draws lost you the game in this tournament? Oh, okay.
So,
well, you got
lucky. At the same time, though, it would not have been bad, because being able to Unmoored Ego like an Agent of Treachery or Nexus of Fate against all the control lists I saw would not have been awful.
Right. No, definitely not.
I also played the Unmoored Ego because this was an open deck list event.
Mm-hmm.
So I was guaranteed to get the best hit I could possibly get, because I knew the deck list of my opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So it had more reason to be in there than not, but it was still bad.
Yeah. I love to see Cry though. I mean,
yeah, no, there's a lot in here that is actually pretty correct. I think my threat suite is pretty well put out, where I'm starting to play my threats in the 4-drop slot up to the 5, where you've got your Sphinx of Foresight, your Godchild Kefnet, Twilight Prophet. But notably, you see that Jace? I'm just as guilty.
I was also gonna knock you down a point for the absorb here, but at least you love to see players speaking on their own mistakes, right? Or things that they feel.
Why I want to bring this
up
just after clowning on all these people about making the literal same mistakes I made at the same time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can look back and realize that something was wrong, but I wasn't any more right than anyone else at that time. Right.
Yeah, no, it's good to see. I'm glad you're willing to take this time to reflect. Get a little introspective.
Notably, Angel of Grace was in because I didn't have another top end, and I kind of thought maybe I'd want it as a way to buy an extra turn if I was dying to aggro at that point.
Mm-hmm. I actually don't really think Angel of Grace is the worst card.
No, but that was my mindset.
Right.
So I had the Angel of Grace, I had the Lyra. I honestly think if I had a little bit less top end, take this Great Shark out, make the mana a bit better. Take the Great Shark out, great shark out, take out one of the extra 6s and put in 2 to 3 more lands, this deck was going to be a lot better positioned because it had a bit of early interaction, that disfigure, that duress, thought erasure. I wasn't on agonizing remorse, which is probably incorrect. The Cry of the Carnarium was able to stop the other Field of the Dead decks. Like, this was actually a pretty well built deck. I just was kind of bad at playing the format.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, there's not like a whole lot in here that like looks like terribly bad.
The Kraken, surprisingly, was one of the best cards in that entire event. People weren't able to deal with it.
Nah, very few cards go tall and wide. I don't know how much stock this card still has or whatever, but I will say it's very unique. Yeah, for sure, definitely not enough trample.
But like, pair this Nadir Kraken with like a Shadow Spear, and we can talk.
Exactly.
Still like Enter the God Eternals, honestly. It's a very good sort of mid-game piece in these types of decks.
Yeah, I mean, this card just kind of really does a lot.
It does a lot.
Merc something.
It's better in Grixis because you don't have the life gain of white, but...
interesting.
Or just pure Dimir.
Uh-huh. That's a good point. It's a good point to be making. Yeah, I was going to say, as far as, Flash Flyers go, I'm probably more on board with Grace than I am with Thrix. I think Thrix is also worth playing.
Because I expected a lot of control, and I wanted my top end to be uncounterable.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, I mean, like you said, just a couple more lands, maybe cut some of the less than stellar cards, and you're good to go. And this deck looks serviceable for sure.
Throw a Golos in there to get that Field of the Dead, and we've got probably a 5-0 list for tournaments back in the day.
Right.
Anyway, I lost with this deck and I stopped playing it, and instead tuned my teamer list to be Gruul, and that's what I brought to every event afterwards.
Got you. So I want to ask you about Twilight Prophet. How did this card perform? Did you ever get the Ascend?
I don't think I ever drew it.
Really? Okay.
But it's kind of good if you get the Ascend, especially in the higher cost control list. I'm surprised to see it nowhere.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like
it has some place somewhere in this format still. I just don't know where.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe in Grixis, maybe in Dimir, where life gain is paramount and games go pretty long.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every time I read this card, I'm like, this has got to be good somewhere, like you said. But Twilight Prophet and green-black mid-range?
Green-black, mono-black control. So places where you don't get the blue card draw, it seems, is where a lot of people are still playing it, which I definitely agree with pretty well.
I almost kind of like... I'm interested in it.
It's wrong, right?
Because it... say that again?
It bobs wrong.
Yeah.
You gain your life when your opponent loses it. It's like a Thorngrim Nemesis.
For sure. And I was going to say, like, sometimes I look at this card and I see, like, maybe we play, like, mono black aggro or something a little more aggressive where you're putting more permanents out quickly.
Flyer.
It's a flyer, and if you can act it, like, if you can get the Ascension to go off, the City's Blessing on, like, on 4 or on 5, like, it's another piece of the race that's, like, very hard to deal with, you know what I mean? I mean, I guess you just remove a creature, but it has to be removed.
Like, a lot of the control lists that would want to see this played are probably so low on creatures that it's going to die basically instantly to the creature removal that was being sandbagged by their opponent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But, the rest of this, I hadn't completely remembered how like where I was, but I was on God Eternal Cabinet from the get-go. Don't you ever forget that. Yeah,
nah, I'm right there with you. Definitely play this card, ladies and gentlemen, because it's very good.
Don't play Unmortigo, though. Learn from my mistakes.
I don't think you want this. But
I mean, like, I guess you can play Unmortigo if you're just like really angry at someone for the deck they bring. Like if you just want to make Joker sad,
Yeah, right.
go in, unmoored eco, there hit it to go second right just for the message.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a send
It's
message
a
card.
It's a card you play out of spite and nothing else.
Let me export this
Yeah, this-
Archer Master list. Let's see what's going on.
Let's see what it looks like.
We get a
I
clean
didn't get a
input.
chance to look too heavy at it, but I know Archer Master was working on that deck for a while.
I gotta make a list of these dual, what's it called, splits.
Oh, it's definitely Migration Path, Andre. So you're gonna have to you'll have to fix that. So remove the migratory route, my friend.
Would you like to save things anyway? Yeah. Import. Oh, migratory route.
Migration Path is what it's supposed to be.
Migration path. All right, let's recopy. Oh, no.
Complete side tangent, but did you see the Seb McKinnon Kickstarter?
No, what's that about?
Seb
I'm
McKinnon
gonna add that
does
video.
Kickstarters to fund his other artistic projects.
Okay.
Right now, he's been generating funding for a feature-length film.
Oh wow. He's
but-
gonna animate a. Tell me.
Oh, he's a filmmaker. He does live action.
Oh.
It's
know that.
the Kin Fable series is actually pretty interesting. Take a look at it if you haven't already. But to fund it, they're doing a Kickstarter that sends out playmats of Seb McKinnon art.
Oh.
Yeah. So you go in, you fund for a number that gives you X amount of playmats, and as you hit as I hit different goals, more and more art pieces are unlocked by polls of various things that Seb McKinnon has made, and this is the one time that an official playmat will be printed of that art. So like a few days ago, Feast of Succession was unlocked as a art that was available on playmat. If you remember that card.
Yeah, vaguely, but that's a pretty cool idea. I had no idea Seth McKinnon was a filmmaker. I'm gonna look into something that he's worked on.
Yeah, I haven't seen the full things of his work, but it was described as like live action Dark Souls vibes.
Interesting. Well,
Okay.
we have the
Okay,
list.
so this is an old Archer Master list.
Right, and it's already spicy. But you tell me, because
So this is a deck that's about to sit with its head in its hands after seeing a questing beast, and I'm sure that's what happened.
right.
Root snare, thwart the enemy, and pause for reflection. So this is kind of how Reclamation used to work, where we copied the ideals of the old standard lists, where Wilderness Reclamation was paired with the fogs and that sort of stuff to get extra time before you nexus to them. And also just shows like the top end that they're playing here is trying to just grind as much possible value that they could find. Is there a Field of the Dead in this list?
One would hope. Yep.
Beautiful. Yep, so that's correct. No Golos, which is probably incorrect, but would eventually be found to be correct. Karn's Temporal Sundering, which is probably incorrect, but in the slow running format, maybe. Jace, a little bit hopeful, so to speak.
Very hopeful.
So if you've basic so many tap lands, that's just true for any deck that was playing Field of Dead at this point, you had so much reason to actually play the non-basic lands. But yeah, this is actually entirely the correct timeline. I think this actually may be a little bit older than the event we looked at, because I am certain that once the historic anthology that brought Morari's Wake onto Arena, it went into Archer Master's list instantly. They've always been on Morari's Wake in my experience.
Right.
And yeah, otherwise, honestly, save the root snare package, pretty well built for the time.
Yeah.
Like Magic Mirror's weird top end, but I understand why it's there. Lack of Questing Beast is just it's the most early Gladiator thing you could ever see.
Just no Questing Beast, but in green. Yeah, I could see that.
But no, they're looking to survive a little bit early and then transition into just valuing your opponent out of the game.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Tremena's Awakening even is here.
Yeah, I was looking at this. This is quite a time to be alive, if I may say so myself. But
you can still play it, my friend.
You think so?
I mean, it's a card that's legal on Arena.
That's very much true. Yeah,
it's better than that Jace, in my opinion.
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's been interesting. This is the first real look back, right? Because we started with the most current tournaments and
and we looked back a week or two for a little while.
And then we had jumped back up because some tournaments had happened. So now we've got more of the structure. This actually isn't, like I said earlier at the start, this isn't as old as we can go. I wasn't aware that, some of the April
so we made it a little bit
around.
older to start off next Wednesday's event.
Right. Next Wednesday we'll get the very first two on the blog, and then obviously we'll keep going up. We'll skip these. And then
eventually we're gonna meet with Present somehow.
Yes, that's true, and I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But Saturday.
Well, I mean, that's also gonna be the year anniversary of us doing it. So really.
Yeah, that's a fact.
If we're still going at that point, I'm celebrating for other reasons.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess before we even get into all the official closing statements, let's just talk some general meta chat. Anything you might have said earlier we missed, anything you want us to talk about, anything you want to talk about.
I think just taking a second and looking back at what used to be played helps. It helps people learn from past mistakes, right?
Right, 100%.
But also, I think there's not a non-zero amount of cards that I was reminded existed by doing this.
Tell me some.
Oh, I can't. It was. It's out of my mind now. But Kaya's, the Kaya. People don't play that enough, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely not.
I played it for a while as one of my removal spells in Omniscience, just because of the fact that it gained life, and that was so rare. But also, I think it needs to go into Gray Weenie, because that's any target. You can dome your opponent out with Nothakaya.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say there's such a little amount of actual just hitting the dome spells in Gladiator that, especially in off color, right? It's just an effect I think you want to be playing, and then you might get some secondary value if you have some planeswalkers in it.
Oh, you always have planeswalkers.
Yeah,
especially back then, but even now you often have planeswalkers.
Right. So, it's interesting to see some cards have fallen out of favor for good reason. Some cards have fallen out of favor for no reason. You know what I mean? It's interesting. It's definitely a point of interest.
Yeah,
My
and
biggest
like
mistake.
Sphinx's insight.
Sphinx's insight. Ah, yes.
It's not great,
No, it is not.
but it's one of those cards that you don't want to forget about if you're ever building the fabled blue-white omniscience list.
It's true.
Which we'll see at some point, I'm sure. Maybe.
One card that comes to mind in the very first list we looked at in the last episode, you remember I was talking about Phalanx Tactics and how that's like a pretty good combat spell that we just don't see. And then we take the first deck we look at today. Phalanx Tactics is right in there, right?
Yep.
And it's just interesting how that
3-mana Vivian,
out.
the Flash Vivian.
Flash Vivian. I'm high on Flash Vivian. I've played a lot of that card.
I enjoy it.
And I think it's
I think the 3-drop slot is very competitive for green right now, so that's probably not why you're not seeing it, but it's very good.
Right. And you know what Flash Vivian kind of is parallel to? So you kind of put Narset in your control decks, part of Veils in your control decks to shore up the control matchup. And Vivian to me kind of speaks to that same vein of like, if you resolve a Vivian in your creature-based deck against control, it's like 3-mana Vivian, right? It's hell for them because you're casting all your threats on their end step, and like to me it just kind of reminds me of that kind of kind of that tech piece.
I think I'm more into 3-mana Domri if I'm playing a 3-mana Walker just to screw control over.
For sure. But should you not be in red, you have access to
Wally.
that.
My apologies, but we have gone through everything already.
Yeah,
You're
Wally.
late to the party, unfortunately.
Love to have you here though. Thanks for stopping in. We're not done just yet.
We're not done.
But
and can we go back for a second to that mono white list that we started off on?
for sure.
Because this is the other thing I just enjoy looking back at and remembering. Where aggro was and what it did.
Yeah, it's funny to see this deck come full circle, right? And it got a lot of cards. It existed at a time where mono red just wasn't even on the radar.
Always there. Right?
Yes.
The 1s and 2s are kind of always like we see very similar 1s and 2s here as opposed to what we saw in the Gladiator games. But the 3s and the 4s are almost entirely different.
For sure. And Oketra is like lost in the wind. There's no Oketra showing up at all.
No Venerate Loxodon even, which I'm not even sure is... I kind of want to see Loxodon come back into these mono white lists.
I've taken beatings from Loxodon. Beatings, like savage beatings from this card. It's a problem, It does kind of require you to like invest some time in maybe not attacking, but
like there are times where attacking isn't good anyway, and then you make the cards that aren't good at attacking better at attacking.
My very next sentence, but you're 100% right. It does do that. It gives you a little way to power up the board. It's like a sort of a permanent anthem if you got the right things going on. And yeah, I was just gonna say too, this deck wins the one of the earlier tournaments ever in the format. Right, aggro, mono white, maybe not as tuned as it is nowadays, but mono red wasn't even on the radar, right? And this deck wins the event, not even being as good as it could have been, clearly, and then falls to the wayside, and no one's playing aggro. I mean, we'll see, but no one was playing aggro in the other event we looked at, basically, right?
No.
And then there's this period, or presumably, where mono white just is on nobody's mind, or red up
people
until
talked about it, but people were talking about it to bemoan how poorly it matched up against the greed control.
True. Yeah, and we've gotten much better.
The next few months were the months of greed in Gladiator.
Greediator.
Where like that was peak commander mindset.
The dark ages of the format, Tyler says.
Dark Ages? I don't know. I quite enjoyed it, but you kind of had to lean into it and join what it was. Yeah. Also, Mono Red was somewhat tainted by people trying to build it as a copy of Medium Red from Highlander.
That's not. I can tell you right now, I have never been a fan of the medium strategy. It's just like, it works. It definitely works. But what makes medium good in Highlander is its extreme
broken mana.
It's the broken mana and its ability to just high roll you, which you just don't have in Gladiator. And also, like, you're trying to high roll someone, right? Like, you're trying to go Mox, Ancient Tomb, Captain Lannery Storm, you know what I mean, into like whatever you want on the next turn, like the world's your oyster, and you're just not going to do that. You're not going to do that in Gladiator. And also, like, that kind of deck building philosophy is really, it's something that I think people don't fully get, you know, like that kind of deck building really requires you to be aware of like what your numbers are, what your curve is, like how likely you are to actually do those things, and the percentages on those types of draws. And like, I think that's probably a part of deck building that people aren't as versed in as they might think. But more importantly,
it's going to be really interesting to see how things progressed, because additionally, the reason that mono white aggro and mono red aggro got so unpopular was because Gruul decks started winning. And Gruul, well, most of these Gruul decks weren't actually aggro decks. They were mid-range decks. They were listed and viewed as aggro decks, and everyone was like, well, that's the best aggro deck in the format. Why should we even try to figure out anything else?
Yeah.
And that was the months of people calling for some sort of Gruul banning.
Gruul
for
banning,
a while.
really? Interesting.
Yeah, I don't even remember what they wanted banned from Gruul, but they just wanted it gone. Because Gruul was coming in, and all these people who were playing Commander were then dying to just decent green and red creatures.
Right. Let me tell you, you know, anyone who's watching, you UFO as well, I think you probably even will agree with this after I say it, but Gruul is the kind of deck you want to be very good in a meta. Like, if Gruul, the mono reds, the mono whites, the Gruuls of the format start underperforming, like, you're gonna see some real goofy decks that you'll hate way more than Gruul. You know what I mean? Like,
see, then came Bant Reclamation.
Exactly. Like, when Gruul's not good, like, people are getting away with the stuff that you really don't want to see. You know what I mean? Like, you'd much rather see a 3-2 with haste.
I almost blame myself for it, honestly, because I won an event very early on with an early version of my Gruul aggro list, and I knew it was the best list I had. But I wanted to 5-0 an event with a combo deck, so I spent literal months tuning a combo deck to be able to 5-0 an event, and eventually got there. But at the same time, all the other Gruul pilots had also kind of left, which meant until Cat Muzi came in to bring us all back down to up to speed on just how good aggro actually is. You know, people were just kind of playing their goofy things because they were enjoying playing their goofy things. Like, they saw Bant Reclamation in the tournament scene, because it was a group of tournament players like Supreme Phantom and the rest, where you're like, oh, that seems sweet, and just copy the list instead of trying to beat it. Because, like, honestly, the Bant Reclamation mirror was pretty damn fun.
I could see it. It's a lot of decision points. You know what I mean? And who's getting
and then like I don't remember who exactly it was. It might have actually been Supreme Phantom. Brought in like the Jor-El Moonvalley Recluse tech.
Oh, interesting.
Where
let me look these cards up. I think I know what we're talking about.
Just play from Recluse. That's the easiest one.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have this card, it seems. Oh, This is definitely the spice.
Early pressure in a deck that's trying to sweep your board at 5. Put it down on 2. Cycle some lands, going into 3 and 4. Get a counter spell for their sweeper. Attack in through 4, turn 3 through 5, and then on turn 6, after they try to sweep your board, you drop your 6th land, activate your the ability after basically using none of your resources other than Joriel, and kill them with the cat armor you had amassed.
I'm really glad to hear this card was putting some work in, because I've looked at this card a number of times when I've thought of, dreams of Simic Tempo and things of the like, and I don't know if there's enough draw sweep for this card in that list, but I'm definitely glad to hear that this card was giving people problems.
The Bant decks, they played all the cycling lands back then because it powered up this card.
Got you. Yeah, I think, gone are the times where we're really playing the cycling lands profitably, but like I said, just love to hear this card giving people problems. Love to hear it. But
so,
yeah.
I think we're transitioning into the end of this talk.
Mm-hmm.